among one of the most resilient and troubling issues that face anyone who takes up a deconstructionist standpoint or a materialist standpoint is the problem of human consciousness. Now, it is, even though I think in the end it'll probably end up being a non-problem, it's still a problem. It's still an issue. And by non-problem, I mean I think the problem goes away just by looking at it from the correct perspective and just by asking the correct questions. I don't think there really is anything to explain about consciousness that is mysterious. I think the mysteriousness is a product of our own mistaken way of looking at it, and assuming that metaphysical claims are made by the experience of the experience. That is, the experience of consciousness doesn't make any metaphysical claims, but because we feel like it does, it becomes very mysterious. But anyway, one of the things that's been suggested by some people who are crazy is that consciousness is, no, I mean, I shouldn't say they're crazy, but the idea is pretty wacky, is that consciousness is just a property of matter. And, I'm just going to merge here. Consciousness is a property of matter. It's not, some materialist famously noted that he could not imagine how consciousness would come about. So he just imputed that as a characteristic of matter itself. So that, and I believe William James also believed that, I don't think it was William James who said that, but William James believed that there was subjectivity down to the electron. That the electron had a subjectivity. I don't want to go any further because you start saying absurd things, which brings you, well, oh no, I will. I mean, what does it mean to say that an electron has subjectivity? That seems to me utter ridiculousness. At least on the face of it. So, one of the it should be noted that I'm kind of using a modus tollens reasoning here, much to the chagrin of my yesterday's self, because basically what I'm saying is, you know, if all matter has subjectivity, then electrons have subjectivity. I claim electrons don't have subjectivity, therefore not all matter has subjectivity, or that it's not a property of matter, or whatever. But and I think even you could even say, I may even be using it in the vein of saying that it'd be awful if that were true. I guess it's kind of difficult in a practical application to, except for ones of direct observation and single incidences, it's kind of hard to do the not P part of the modus tollens without resorting to a claim that it's violating some aesthetic, moral, or metaphysical principle, which basically can all boil down to, I don't like it. But it's still useful for me to use that, because what I want to do is make a two-part pincer attack against this notion of consciousness. First of all, why is consciousness even considered to be mysterious? I thought about this for a long time because it is very mysterious to me, but I do think that it's a non-problem, and I think you can think it away. You don't need to really come up with an answer. You just need to come up with the correct perspective to dissolve the problem entirely. Consciousness is starting with something that we can all concretely agree on. Consciousness is the functioning of the brain, of the human brain, and our experience of it is what is so mysterious. Now, the human brain functions the way it does because it evolved in an environment where it was useful for the brain to pretend like it was itself, to pretend like it had consciousness and have investment in the fate of the body and all that stuff. And so consciousness ties us to our body. It ties us to our own thoughts and our memories and our histories, because those things are very useful. People who don't have those, you can just see very clearly, you could see very clearly that someone who didn't have a sense of self or didn't have any connection to their own memories, or just didn't feel like they were the person that they were experiencing themselves to be. And I know that's not worded wonderfully, but that kind of person wouldn't survive very well. So we can see right off the bat that that there's an evolutionary advantage to believing that there's something real to consciousness. Basically, there's an evolutionary advantage to feeling like you have a soul, for lack of a better word, because that really encompasses the feeling that you're a whole being, that your mind is a substantial thing. In fact, I think your mind is the runtime logbook of the biochemical processes of your brain. But it's in our advantage to experience it differently than what it is, just like it's not in our advantage to experience sugars and proteins as strings of chemicals. It's in our advantage to experience them as tasty. And that's how we do. We don't perceive foods as in their chemical form. We perceive them in the form that's useful to us. And I think the same thing can be said for consciousness.